So for my 10-page research paper and my final presentation, I decided to talk about China's economy and how it's changed over time. And the first thing I want to talk about is trade in China, and I think trade originated back in China from the Silk Road era. So as you can see from this map over here, China's over here, and the Silk Road went to India, Arabia, Egypt, Europe, and it spread it down to Somalia and Java. And some of the goods that were traded on the Silk Road were horses, camels, various fruits, animal furs, textile, and minimal slaves, but there were some slaves. And from the Silk Road, things that were going out of China, obviously silk, tea, ivory, medicine, rice, spices, and some artifacts. This helped China's economy grow because this was the first time their Chinese people, their goods were seen as in high demand, so they kept producing more and more of them, which allowed them to have influx of money in their economy, which allowed them to keep producing more. And since they imported some of these goods on this side of the page, they were able to just advance in how they lived. And how trade changed the economy. It allowed more growth into China. As I said, new ideas and new products entered China, allowing Chinese people to grow and develop into the country they are today because it allowed the beginning stages of a powerful economy. It allowed goods and ideas to go in and out of China, like I said. Eastern medicine is still practiced today, which is good because it stayed from the Silk Road era to now, showing how powerful they have been. Gave the people of China a source of revenue because they kept producing more and more goods through the Silk Road, and that allowed them to generate more money because their stuff was in high demand. I put China on the map due to their high quality goods and medicine practices. Like I just said, for example, the cupping is very prevalent today as some of our classmates still practice cupping. Introduced the beginning stages of an economic boom in China because when people wanted more of their goods, they just kept purchasing them. And the next thing I wanted to talk about are the businesses in China. Some of the businesses like WeChat, Apple, Nike, and Alibaba Group, they introduced the cash flows into China, or increased the cash flows into China, because they're companies that are in China and they're producing goods in China, which helps the Chinese economy grow. Because if the company's making money and they have assets in China, the ability for the company to grow is greater, which allows the country to grow because of the company's growth. Employ the people of China, reducing poverty. Since these companies are in China, they are obviously employing the Chinese people, and since China has a high poverty rate, they are just literally decreasing the poverty rate just by hiring old poor farmers and people in rural areas. This allowed the country to develop. New ideas and products have allowed China to grow just because of how fast the world is growing. Gave the Chinese economy a big boost. The influx in cash flows in China allowed Chinese people to see the economy as a very powerful economy in the world and have the ability to change the markets and have an influence in the world. And this all began in 1978, where the Chinese laws allowed big businesses like Nike and Apple to go into China, build factories, and produce their goods there, which is an economic benefit. How the businesses changed the economy. Big businesses helped the Chinese economy to advance and begin to show the true power of China. Businesses gave the country an increase of cash flow because the goods became produced in China. And if the products are being bought by customers, then the companies will keep buying the developed assets to produce products, which gives more money to China, and more money to China always means an economic growth. Change it for the better because it also reduced the poverty level, increased the cash flows in the country, because the companies are giving salary and wages to the poor people of China, allowing them to reduce the poverty rate, which is good for the GDP and the economy as a whole. And the last thing I want to talk about are the people of China. The Chinese people, they gave businesses a reason to stay and enter China to work. Like I said in the previous few slides, the poverty levels made it easier for the people of China to get jobs, just because the big companies would come in and mass produce their stuff, and the Chinese workers would be paid less than the American workers for the same good, and they'd be pushed harder to produce the same good and have more overtime, but not the same pay as American workers have. So they have lower laws to benefit them. Many ideas came from Chinese people like Alibaba and WeChat and many others, but those are the two that stuck out to me the most, because those are the two we talked the most about in class. Especially WeChat, how it's literally almost every social media platform in one. That concept from a Chinese man is actually really cool. How people change the economy. The people of China changed the economy for the better. The poor people were, I think they're the backbone of the country, because if the poor people were not there, the companies and country would not have had the chance for the companies to come into China and develop, which would have led to a less powerful Chinese economy or less growth in the Chinese economy. The poor people gave China a chance because of the levels of poverty. The companies that came into China and the Chinese company that grew rapidly over the few years, they saw that there's a good amount of workers that are willing and able to work in these factories, so that they built factories in areas where they can have access to a lot of workers for not a lot of pay. And the working laws was a great place for companies to grow and be able to make profit for themselves and the country they're located in, because the laws for workers are not as strict as they are in the United States and other countries, so companies have more leeway in working. But I think in recent years, countries like the United States have realized that, and they're trying to fix that for the Chinese people. And the rich people gave the Chinese economy hope because of people like Jack Ma, who created Alibaba, which is the Chinese version of Amazon. He has made so much money, and he's a Chinese man, so his company's in China, and with that being said, his company helps the Chinese economy because it is in China, and if his company is successful, the country indirectly is successful economically because of the growth the company's having, employing more people, and because of the growth the country's having. These are my works cited pages, or works cited links. Does anyone have any questions? Reese.
Where does the Chinese economy rank among other world powers?
Good question. The Chinese economy is in the top 3. I think the United States is number 1 GDP per capita, and I think Russia and China are ranked 2, or tied for 2nd in GDP per capita, but I think China has the higher GDP than Russia, but Russia has a higher GDP per capita because of the less population. Good question. Any other questions? Reese.
What is the GDP of those nations?
I think the GDP for China per capita is about $17,000. In US dollars, is about $17,000. And the GDP for the United States is about $60,000. And the GDP for Russia is about $45,000. And which per capita would make China 3rd, but overall the GDP, I think the Chinese economy has a 12, or I think they're number 2 in GDP, but they're 3rd in GDP per capita because of their huge population. No more questions.